especially because considering now, like I'm kind of trying to equate this to the Black Lives Matter and how they go together. But I think that was a big difference, is everyone thought that everything was so spontaneous then, and I'm
No.
like, no, it was a lot of coordination.
Oh, yes. And it was all done through the churches.
So, well, I think you, funny, you
Which
actually,
one?
no, you actually answered a bunch of the questions. So how did you actually? I guess I'd say, how did you get to these groups? Like, did they have did they come looking for you? Did you know like they were having meetings and you went to a meeting, or?
Our parents were involved in the NAACP, or the churches were involved, and they would say, there's going to be a meeting here at this time, and after the meeting, you knew that they would then give you your strategies for how to act and all like that, and how often they were going to meet. But here's another thing I found out later. A lot, I was younger when all of this first started. In fact, my senior year, I'm mostly 16. But but the college students, when I was younger, who was doing the sit-ins in the Woolworth stores and stuff like that, at their lunch counters, my mother, their groups, they were the one coaching the kids on that kind of stuff. So it was a part of my, regular thing.
And then the other things, I know I've read a lot about the movement center. So how involved was I guess I'll say your church in the whole thing? I know they said that they would have some meetings there because it was a good place to congregate people and not have some of the watchful eyes on you. So was the church really involved, or was it just kind of them sending you?
Oh no, the churches were involved, and sometime there was even some disparities in the black community. I remember when we marched in front of Morrison Cafeteria. There was a black newspaper, and the editor there, the owner, wrote an editorial about all these students shouldn't be over there disturbing people and all that kind of stuff. Because some white people would come to that restaurant and they'd see all these kids around, they'd turn around and leave. So I guess, I can't guess what his intentions were, or if he was influenced by the owners because they paid for advertising or what. But he told us, he really put us down for that. So in our school newspaper, we said, one day when this is all integrated and you are enjoying a meal there, you need to thank us.
Yes. See, that's another one that interests me, because it made a lot of sense that way too, is like what you're saying with the white people turning around. And they said one of the big things wasn't even just the sit-ins, but it was that people started getting to the point where like they're losing this money, and we need to figure something out, which is kind of a sad reason, like we're not doing this for
Well,
human rights, we're doing
look
it
at
for money.
Birmingham. But what actually happened and changed a lot of thinking around is it came on television. So television really emphasized to people who hadn't even thought about it, and I'm sure white people or whatever, who hadn't even thought about it, that they were turning dogs off loose on kids. They were using fire hose to shove people back. They were beating them. So all of that came out to all America. So that was really a turning point there.
Geez, you actually answered most of these questions in there. What is the most important thing you've personally learned from the work?
From the work I do? My thing is, I want all kids to be able to be successful. When I say kids, I mean even your age or whatever. And I believe education is the way. So I mentor kids. And I was very proud this year. The kids I mentored the high school kids. Now this year, the kids that I have mentored for the last 3 years, 100% of them got accepted into college. So, and I do that, I meet them at the Vacaville Library. So, that is one thing, and I work with kids on such things as different social interactions. There's a different way to behave.
Yeah.
And I talk to them about it's not the loudest, it's not it's just being aware of things, and the real power is green power. It's not, whatever kind of power you talk about, it's about green power and being able to take care of yourself, being able to have a job to make it better for your family, and that's what you need to concentrate on. And I always tell the kids, I say, hey, I'm this age. I want to make sure you're well educated and you can read well, because you get to decide whether or not I get Social Security or not. So that's how we talk about it.
So, I guess how about I want to word this one, because it's a little different. For I guess people like me, there's a lot of people who know about the civil rights movement, but we kind of know, we don't know the whole story. And it's something that I've learned a lot, just being in school, that I didn't know for the last 35 years.
Okay.
So, I guess what's the most important lesson that you would like people my age and younger to know about what happened in the civil rights movement?
Know your history. Don't forget your history. Your grandfather was a history major, mine in political science, and he's one of the first group that received a Black Studies degree. So you got to know your history. So Kathy and Paula grew up with all of that, but you got to know your history. Either that or you make the same mistakes all over again. They repeat themselves. So you really have to know that. Paula was telling her son, the 19-year-old, that if people call you or something like that, if you get stopped by the police, the story that most parents tell, most Black parents and Hispanic parents and Filipino parents tell their kids, get stopped, don't question them, just do what they say. And of course, he being a typical 19-year-old now, well, they don't have no business stopping me for so-and-so. Paul say, no, listen. All your information is above your visor. Get what they ask you for. And he got ready to say something else. He said, all we want is for you to come home safe. That's the most important lesson of all. So she's been sharing some information with him, and she didn't think he was listening to him. She was sharing about the Tuskegee experiment. If you know about the Tuskegee experiment, where they actually ingested syphilis into Black guys to study the results of it. So, and then she heard him on the phone talking to one of his friends, saying, man, do you know U.S. government was injecting syphilis into Black guys, and stuff like that, just so they could study it, and never gave them the cure for it or anything like that, even though they discovered syphilis during that time. So he's listening some, but you got to know your history. You really have to know it.
So what was the most challenging aspect back then, and what do you think is still challenging now about what you're doing?
I think the most challenging aspect back then was people doubted your ability. I spent one semester at the University of South Florida. But many of those white teachers had an edict that no black kid should be successful there. They were just starting the integrations at the college levels. They did not want any of us to be successful there. So I turned 18 during that year. No, 16, 17. Anyway, so my mother and aunt said, well, she needs to go to a historically black school. And they were both graduates of the same university also. So they just didn't want me to go to school right after I got out of high school because I just turned 17. So they wanted me to stay close to home. But after that, I went to Florida A&M. So I went there, had a very successful academic there. But the other was when I got into the working field. And I was at the Catholic schools in Florida, and I was at the Catholic schools in California. Never had a problem. When I got into public schools, I came with a Catholic school attitude. I expected all of my parents to show up for open house. I only had 26 of my parents show up. I was in tears because I expected every parent to be there. And the principal was saying, God, you had 26 parents, that's good. No, it's not good. I didn't have every parent there. But the other part was when I became an assistant principal at Darnell High School, the principal supported me. The two VPs didn't. They said it loud enough for me to hear. We knew we were going to finally get a woman as an administrator, but a black one at that. And they wanted me to hear it. So I said, okay. Anything that happened in this school, I will know about it. Between the teachers, the kids, and the parents. And that's what I set out to do. And of course, sometimes I ran into problems, but I challenged the teachers on it, and because I know the law. I knew education law. So that's one of them. More people doubting your ability to do things, and then when you do, it's like, oh, really?
So speaking of doubt, I just kind of popped into my mind. What like when you guys were doing the sit-ins, when you guys were doing all this stuff, how were you feeling about the situation when it was going on? Like, were you feeling at the time that it was working? Were you worried that maybe it wasn't going to work? Or?
I didn't know whether it would work or not. Remember, I was 15, 16 years old, but I had faith that it would, and we really followed the training. You know, Martin Luther King studied Mahatma Gandhi. He studied Gandhi. And a social change can happen without there being unrest. And so it would not be on our part. But that's why Nixon won the election, because he showed anything where anyone was, he would show fire bombings, anything on television, and said, if you want a law and order person, you need to pick Nixon. But, so, you know, we basically knew, because we were surrounded by adults too. So we basically knew that somebody might come up and slap us or hit us or spit on us or something like that, but we were safe.
So, what has been the most rewarding part for you?
To see all of my kids be successful in life. Erin Hannigan, who's our supervisor, head of the Solano County Supervisors, I had her in 4th grade at Holy Spirit. You know, so it doesn't matter what color they are. It matters that they are successful, and I had a role in that. So that's I think is that both of my daughters have good college educations and good jobs, you know? And I'd like to say the same thing about my grandchildren too.
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
See how this economy is next year when I actually graduate, because that's not something I'm looking forward to. But
You know, that's always been. It's always been. When I graduated from college, because I didn't plan on going into teaching. I was going to be a statistician. You know, I'm a math person. I'm very good at math. So I was going to be a statistician. I was going to do my internship with the Census Bureau because my mentor at Florida State, where I went to grad school, was Charlie Nam. He wrote most of the books that the Census Bureau used at the time. So I got this job in West Palm Beach because my brother-in-law had come back, Orville, had come back and said, you know, I went to pick up my books and everything today, and they were still interviewing. And he was going to be the music teacher. So I just picked up the phone and called and said, are you still looking for teachers? Because I had been offered a job as a part-time professor at Florida A&M. But Ted, my husband, had been offered a job in Sears Management Training Program because he had worked there every holiday and everything. So I said, if I get a job here, then, you know, that would be fine. And I never took a grad course. I never took a education course until I went to grad school. I hadn't had any, you know, so, but I was always tutoring kids when I was in college and everything. So, never planned on teaching and loved it. Absolutely loved it. And when I came to California,